Get out! Right now!
Sir, I only came to get...
Are you deaf? Filthy blacks like you stink up this place.
The man in the navy blue polo shirt didn't move. His voice remained low, almost gentle.
My order is right there. My name is on the bag.
Your order? You only eat leftovers. You came here to steal.
He snatched the bag and threw it to the floor. The box shattered. Sauce splattered all over the tile floor.
Here.
He sneezed, pointing downwards.
Kneel down and eat on the ground or get out.
The dining room fell silent. Suddenly, a man burst in. He spoke directly to the manager's face. Just one sentence, that's all. The manager turned pale. Not because of what he had done, but because of what's about to happen next. Let me take you back to the beginning. Friday evening, downtown Atlanta. Peachtree Street was alive with headlights and high heels clicking on concrete. The air smelled like warm asphalt and magnolia. The Ashford Grill sat on the corner like it owned the block. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Warm Edison bulbs casting golden light across white tablecloths. A hostess in all black standing behind a polished oak podium. Soft jazz leaking through the front door every time it swung open. This wasn't a place for quick meals. This was a place where people came to be seen. The valet out front wore a vest and a smile. The parking lot was a showroom. Mercedes, BMWs, a Porsche tucked in the corner like it was hiding. The kind of restaurant where the wine list was thicker than the menu, where the cheapest steak cost more than some people's grocery bill for the week. If you looked closely at the brass plaque near the entrance, you'd see 4 small words etched into the metal. A Pinnacle Hospitality Property. Nobody ever looked closely. They should have. Now. Into this world, a 10-year-old Honda Accord pulled into the lot. No tinted windows, no custom rims, just a clean, ordinary car with a small dent on the rear bumper. The man who stepped out didn't look like he belonged, at least not by the standards of the people watching from inside. Navy blue polo, khaki pants, plain white sneakers, no watch worth noticing. His name was Owen Foster. He held the door open for an elderly couple walking out. The woman smiled and thanked him. Owen smiled back, easy, unhurried, like a man with nowhere to be and all the time in the world. But Owen did have somewhere to be. Home. His daughter Lily had called him 20 minutes ago. "Daddy, don't forget my carrot cake." That was it. That was the whole reason he was here, a father picking up dessert for his little girl's birthday. He walked to the side counter where to-go orders were placed. A brown paper bag sat waiting, his name printed clearly on the label. Owen Foster. What nobody in that room knew, not the hostess, not the bartender, not the couple at table 4 sipping Chardonnay, was that Owen had built this restaurant from nothing. He chose the tile beneath their feet. He approved the menu they were reading. He signed the lease on the building they were sitting in. He owned Pinnacle Hospitality Group, 32 properties across the Southeast, hotels, restaurants, rooftop bars, a catering empire. But tonight, Owen wasn't here as the owner. He was here as a dad, picking up cake. And then there was Craig Henderson. Craig came out of the back office the way a prison guard steps onto the yard, chest first, chin up, eyes scanning. He adjusted his tie in the reflection of the bar mirror, smoothed his hair, checked his cuffs. He'd been general manager for 8 months, hired through a corporate staffing firm while Owen was traveling overseas. Craig had never met Owen Foster, never seen his face, never bothered to read the ownership documents sitting in the company shared drive. To Craig, he was the king of this castle, and he ruled it like one. He snapped his fingers at a busboy clearing table 9. "Faster, you're not on a lunch break." He passed Tamara Collins, a black server carrying a tray of drinks, and muttered without looking at her, "Smile, Tamara, you look angry. You're scaring the guests." Tamara said nothing. She'd learned not to. Craig had a habit. Every time someone walked through that front door, his eyes would move to them before his body did. He'd scan them head to toe, shoes first, then clothes, then skin. If you passed the test, you got a smile and a good evening. If you didn't, you got Craig. And right now, Craig's eyes had found Owen, a black man, standing at the counter, navy polo, white sneakers. His jaw tightened, his posture straightened, his fingers curled around the cuff of his sleeve. He didn't see a customer. He didn't see a father. He didn't see an owner. He saw a problem. And Craig Henderson loved solving problems. Craig crossed the dining room in 6 long strides. He didn't walk toward Owen the way you'd walk toward a guest. He walked toward him the way a bouncer walks toward a problem at the door. Shoulders squared, jaw set, eyes locked. Owen was standing at the to-go counter, scrolling through his phone. A photo of Lily in her birthday dress had just come through. Pink tutu, crooked tiara, gap-toothed smile. He grinned at it. He didn't see Craig coming. "Can I help you?" Owen looked up. Craig was standing 3 feet away, arms folded, blocking the space between Owen and the counter like a wall. "Yeah, I'm just picking up a to-go order," Owen said. "Should be right there, under Foster." Craig didn't look at the counter, didn't check the system, didn't glance at the bag sitting 2 feet from his elbow with Owen's name printed on it in black marker. Instead, he looked Owen up and down, slow, deliberate. Shoes first, then pants, then polo, then face. "This counter is for customers who've placed orders through the app or by phone," Craig said. "Do you have a confirmation number?" "I called it in about an hour ago," Owen said. "The bag's right there. My name's on it." Craig still didn't look. "Sir, I'm going to need you to show me a confirmation. We've had issues with people walking in off the street and grabbing orders that don't belong to them." Owen tilted his head slightly. He'd heard this before. Not the words, the tone. That particular frequency of suspicion dressed up as policy. The kind of voice that says, "I don't trust you," without ever using those words. "The bag says Owen Foster," he said, patient. "That's me. I just want to grab it and go. I'll be out of your way in 2 minutes." Craig unfolded his arms. He stepped closer, close enough that Owen could smell his cologne, something sharp and aggressive like the man wearing it. "I'm going to need to see some ID." Owen blinked. "ID? To pick up a to-go order?" "Policy." It wasn't policy. There was no such policy, not in the employee handbook, not on the website, not in any training manual at any of the 32 properties. Owen knew because he'd written the handbook himself. But he didn't say that. Not yet. He reached into his back pocket, pulled out his wallet, and handed Craig his driver's license. Craig held it up to the light like he was inspecting a counterfeit bill. He looked at the photo, looked at Owen, looked at the photo again, tilted it sideways, squinted. Then he handed it back without a word. But he still didn't move. "There's also the matter of our dress code," Craig said. Owen looked down at himself. Polo, khakis, clean sneakers. "I'm not dining in," Owen said. "I'm picking up a bag." "Doesn't matter. The Ashford Grill maintains a business casual minimum at all times. Your attire doesn't meet that standard." Owen glanced past Craig into the dining room. Table 2. A white man in a baseball cap and a faded college t-shirt, eating a ribeye. Table 7. A woman in flip-flops, laughing with her friend over a bottle of rosé. The bar. A kid in a hoodie, no older than 21, nursing a cocktail and scrolling his phone. None of them had been stopped. None of them had been asked for ID. None of them had been told they didn't meet the standard. Owen looked back at Craig. You want to talk about dress code? I'm telling you our policy. Your policy. Owen's voice didn't rise. It got quieter. The man at table 2 is wearing a beer logo on his chest. The woman at table 7 is in flip-flops. But I'm the one who doesn't meet the standard. Craig's eye twitched. Just barely. A flicker of something. Not guilt, not shame. Annoyance. The annoyance of a man who wasn't used to being questioned by someone he considered beneath him. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to wait outside. I'll have someone bring your order to the curb. To the curb. Like a dog waiting for scraps at the back door. Owen felt the heat behind his eyes. He'd felt it before. In boardrooms, in banks, in parking lots where security followed him to his car. The heat that comes when someone treats you like you're less than human. The heat you learn to swallow, because you know what happens when a black man lets it show in public. He swallowed it. I'm not waiting outside, Owen said, calm as still water. My order is right there. I'm going to pick it up, and I'm going to leave. He reached for the bag. Craig's hand got there first. He snatched it off the counter, held it up between them, inspected it the way he'd inspected Owen's license, like it couldn't possibly be real, like nothing about this man could be real. I need to verify this is actually yours. My name is on the bag. We've had issues. My name is on the bag. Craig looked at Owen. His lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. It was the expression of a man who had power and wanted you to feel it, wanted you to shrink under the weight of it. Then he opened his hand. The bag dropped. Not a toss, not an accident, a deliberate, open-palmed release. His fingers spread wide like he was letting go of something filthy. The brown paper bag hit the tile floor with a wet thud. The container inside cracked open on impact. Carrot cake, Lily's favorite, the one with the cream cheese frosting and the little orange sprinkles she always picked off first and saved for last, split apart across the polished floor. Frosting smeared in a white streak across the tile. Sauce bled out in a slow, dark puddle. Oops, Craig said. His voice was flat, dead, empty of everything except satisfaction. Guess you'll need to reorder. He looked down at the mess, then back at Owen. Or you could get on your knees and clean that up. Your choice. The jazz was still playing, something soft and sweet with a saxophone. It felt obscene now, like music at a crime scene. The dining room didn't just go quiet, it froze. The couple at table 4 stopped mid-bite. The woman's fork hung in the air, a piece of salmon still on it. Her husband set his napkin down slowly, staring at Craig with his mouth open. The man at the bar lowered his glass so carefully you could hear the ice shift against the crystal. Brenda Lawson, 62 years old, white hair, pearl earrings, sitting at table 6 with her husband Gerald, reached into her purse without saying a word. She pulled out her phone, tilted the screen toward Craig, and pressed record. Her hands were steady, her face was not. A young couple near the window exchanged a look. The woman whispered, "Oh my God." Her partner shook his head, hands flat on the table, like he was keeping himself from standing up and doing something he'd regret. Tamara Collins stood frozen in the middle of the dining room, a tray of drinks balanced on her palm. Her eyes were wide, her lips were pressed tight. She'd seen Craig do ugly things before, the comments about her hair, the way he seated black guests by the kitchen, the time he told the sous chef his food was too ethnic. But this, throwing a man's food on the floor and telling him to kneel? This was something she'd never forget. Owen looked down at the floor. At the cake, At the frosting, at the little orange sprinkles scattered across tile he'd personally chosen 3 years ago from a showroom in Savannah. His daughter's birthday cake. On the floor, at his feet, in his own restaurant. He bent down slowly, picked up the cracked container with both hands, set it gently on the counter. The frosting left a white smear across his fingers. He wiped them on his khakis without rushing. Then he looked Craig Henderson dead in the eye. His voice was barely above a whisper. But every single person in that room heard it. You're going to regret this. Craig smirked, crossed his arms, leaned back on his heels like a man who had already won. Is that a threat? You want me to call the police? Because I will, and trust me, they won't be as polite as I've been. Owen said nothing. He just stood there, still as stone, eyes steady, hands at his sides. And that stillness, that terrifying, patient, unshakable calm, should have told Craig everything he needed to know. But Craig was too busy feeling powerful to notice he was standing on the edge of a cliff. Craig pulled his phone from his jacket pocket before Owen could take another breath. He didn't hesitate, didn't pause to consider what he was doing or what it would cost. He swiped the screen, tapped a number, and pressed the phone to his ear with the casual ease of a man ordering takeout. Yeah, this is Craig Henderson, General Manager at the Ashford Grill on Peachtree. I need building security down here. Now. He wasn't whispering. He wasn't stepping into the hallway or turning his back. He made the call right there, 3 feet from Owen, loud enough for the entire dining room to absorb every syllable. I've got a hostile individual in the restaurant, black male, mid-40s, polo shirt, white sneakers. He's refusing to leave the premises, and he just made a verbal threat against me personally. Hostile. Threat. Refusing to leave. Owen hadn't raised his voice once, hadn't lifted a finger, hadn't taken a single step in any direction. But in Craig's version of events, the version being transmitted through a phone to men in uniforms, Owen was already dangerous, already a situation, already a problem that required force to resolve. Owen stood perfectly still, hands at his sides, fingers open, visible, palms facing forward slightly, almost instinctively, the way a man does when he wants the world to see he's holding nothing. He knew the math. Every black man in America knows the math. It runs in the background, like software you never installed but can never uninstall. Where are my hands? How loud is my voice? Who's watching? Who has a phone pointed at me? If I move too fast, does someone flinch? If I speak too firmly, does it become aggression in a police report? If I stand my ground, does it become resisting? He did the math in 2 seconds and chose the only answer that kept him breathing. Stillness. Craig ended the call and slid the phone back into his pocket with a satisfied flick of his wrist. He looked at Owen the way a chess player looks at a king with nowhere to move. Security's on the way, he said. Last chance. Walk out that door on your own 2 feet, or they'll walk you out. Your choice. Owen's jaw tightened. One muscle in his cheek flexed. Once. That was it. The only crack in the surface of a man holding an entire hurricane behind his ribs. I'm not leaving, Owen said. His voice was level, almost gentle. The kind of gentle that scares people who are paying attention. I haven't done anything wrong. You threatened me. I said you'd regret this. That's not a threat. It's a fact. Craig's nostrils flared. He stepped closer. Close enough that Owen could see the thread count on his lapel. Close enough that the hostess behind the podium instinctively took a half step backward, her heel catching on the carpet. You people always have something to say, Craig hissed through his teeth. Always got an attitude. Always think the rules don't apply to you. You walk in here dressed like that, acting like you own the place. He almost laughed at his own words. You people, acting like you own the place. The words hung in the air between them like smoke from a fire that had been burning for 400 years. Owen didn't respond, not with words. His eyes moved past Craig and found Tamara, standing near the kitchen door, tray still balanced on her palm, eyes glistening under the Edison lights. She gave him the smallest nod, barely a movement, barely visible. A nod that said, I see this. I see you. I'm so sorry. Owen looked away, blinked once, swallowed something that tasted like iron and patience. Craig took Owen's silence as surrender. It wasn't. It was restraint. The kind of restraint that costs more than most people will ever understand. The kind that leaves bruises no one can see. And then, Craig reached for his phone again. This time, it wasn't building security. This time, he dialed 3 numbers. 911. He pressed the phone to his ear and turned slightly, just enough to give Owen his side profile. The posture of a man who wanted you to watch him end you. Yes, I need police at the Ashford Grill, Peachtree Street, downtown Atlanta. I have a black male on the premises, mid-40s, approximately 6'1", navy shirt, white shoes. He is refusing to leave the property. He has become increasingly aggressive and confrontational. He made a direct verbal threat to my personal safety. I consider him dangerous. I need officers here immediately. Every word was a weapon. Every adjective was a bullet loaded into a chamber Craig was aiming at Owen's future without ever laying a hand on him. Aggressive. Owen was standing still. Confrontational. His hands were open. Dangerous. He'd spoken maybe 15 words in the last 5 minutes. Direct threat. He'd told a man the truth. Craig knew exactly what he was doing. He knew what happens when you call 911 and paint a black man as dangerous. He knew the word aggressive activates a different protocol than upset. He knew direct threat to my personal safety means officers arrive with hands already resting on their holsters. He knew all of this, the same way he knew the wine list and the table numbers. It was just another tool in his management style. He wasn't just calling the police. He was weaponizing them. Owen watched Craig's mouth move, watched the lies roll off his tongue, smooth as silk. Watched this man build a version of reality, brick by brick, word by word, where a father picking up birthday cake became a criminal who needed to be dragged out in handcuffs. And then Owen did something that surprised every person in that room. He pulled out his own phone. Craig's eyes snapped to Owen's hand. A flash of alarm shot across his face, the raw instinct of a man who knows he's doing something wrong and sees the other person reach for something. But it wasn't a weapon. It was a phone. A plain black phone with a cracked screen protector. Owen scrolled through his contacts, found a name, pressed call. He turned away from Craig slightly, not out of fear, out of privacy. His voice dropped so low it became almost inaudible. The couple at the nearest table leaned forward without realizing it. They caught nothing. The call lasted 11 seconds. 11 seconds. No shouting, no begging, no dramatic monologue. Just a few quiet words and a tap of the red button. Then Owen slid the phone back into his pocket and stood exactly where he'd been standing before. Same posture, same position, same terrifying, unreadable calm. Like a man who had just set something in motion and was content to wait for gravity to do the rest. Craig stared at him. "Who was that, your lawyer?" Owen said nothing. It doesn't matter who you called, Craig said. But something in his voice had shifted, a half-tone higher, a fraction less steady. The voice of a man who just heard a sound in a dark room and isn't sure what made it. Police are already on the way. You're done here. Owen didn't respond, didn't move, didn't blink. Just stood there like a man who had lit a fuse and was counting down in his head. The minutes that followed were the longest minutes anyone in that restaurant had ever lived through. The kind of minutes that stretch like wet rope, where every second has weight and texture and teeth, where the air itself feels heavier, thicker, harder to breathe. Craig paced behind the host stand, back and forth. 4 steps left, 4 steps right. He adjusted his tie twice, checked his phone 3 times, straightened a stack of menus that didn't need straightening, picked up a pen, put it down, picked it up again. Owen didn't pace, didn't fidget, didn't check his phone. He stood near the counter with his hands at his sides and his eyes fixed on the middle distance, like a man watching something massive and inevitable rolling toward him from the horizon. The jazz kept playing. Nobody was listening. A busboy emerged from the kitchen, saw the smear of cake and frosting still on the floor, and froze, like he'd stepped onto a crime scene. He looked at Craig. Craig snapped his fingers and pointed down. "Clean it up." The boy grabbed a mop and worked fast, eyes on the floor, mouth shut. The frosting was gone in 30 seconds, but the stain it left, on the tile, on the air, on every person who watched a man's food get thrown at his feet, that wasn't going anywhere. An older black couple near the back quietly flagged their server for the check. The woman's hands trembled as she signed the receipt. Her husband stood first, helped her into her coat, and guided her toward the side exit with his hand on the small of her back. They didn't look at Craig. They didn't look at Owen. They just left. They'd seen this before. They knew how these things end. Tamara set her tray down on the service station. She couldn't hold it anymore. Her fingers were shaking too hard. The room smelled like seared meat and spilled frosting and something electric, the sharp metallic scent of a moment right before it breaks. Craig checked his watch. Owen checked nothing. Somewhere outside, getting closer with every passing second, 2 things were approaching this restaurant: the police Craig had called and the person Owen had called. Only one of them was going to save Craig Henderson's career, and it wasn't the one wearing a badge. The front door of the Ashford Grill swung open hard enough to rattle the glass. Every head in the dining room turned. Craig straightened up behind the host stand, smoothing his tie, lifting his chin, already preparing his speech for whoever just walked in. Security. Police. Someone with a badge and authority he could hide behind. It wasn't security. It wasn't police. It was a man in a charcoal suit, silver hair, steel-rimmed glasses, jaw tight enough to crack walnuts. He stepped through the doorway like a storm front moving inland, fast, focused, and carrying something heavy behind his eyes. His name was Nate Ellison, CEO of Pinnacle Hospitality Group, the man who ran the company, the man who answered to only one person on earth. The person standing at the counter with frosting still on his khakis. Nate scanned the room in 2 seconds flat. He saw the faint smear on the tile where the busboy had mopped. He saw the cracked container still sitting on the counter. He saw Tamara standing frozen near the kitchen door. He saw Brenda Lawson's phone, still recording, tilted toward the center of the room. And he saw Owen, standing alone, hands at his sides, calm as a man who had already decided how this story ends. Nate's face went white. Not slowly, not in stages, all at once, like someone pulled a plug and the blood just drained straight down. Craig didn't notice. Craig was already moving. He stepped forward with his chest puffed and his manager voice locked and loaded. He saw a man in an expensive suit and assumed it was an ally. "Sir, good evening. I'm Craig Henderson, general manager. We have a situation here." He gestured toward Owen with an open hand, casual, dismissive, the way you gesture toward a stain on the carpet. "This individual was asked to leave the premises and has refused to comply. I've already contacted the police. Everything is under—" "Stop talking!" 2 words. That's all Nate said. But the way he said them, low, flat, with a kind of controlled fury that vibrated in the air between them, made Craig's mouth snap shut like a trap. Nate didn't blink, didn't move. He just stared at Craig with an expression that Craig had never seen directed at him before. The expression of a man looking at something that disgusted him. "Do you know who that man is?" Nate said. He pointed at Owen. His hand was steady. His voice was not. Craig glanced at Owen, then back at Nate. A flicker of confusion crossed his face, the first crack in the armor. He's a customer who—" "That man," Nate said, and now his voice rose just enough to reach every corner of the dining room, every table, every ear, "is Owen Foster." He let the name sit in the air for a moment, let it land. Craig blinked. The name didn't register. Not yet. Nate took one step closer, close enough that Craig could see the vein pulsing in his temple. "He's not a customer. He's not a visitor. He's not some guy who wandered in off the street." Another step. "He is the owner of this restaurant. He is the owner of this building. He is the owner of Pinnacle Hospitality Group, the company that pays your salary, funds your health insurance, and signs the check that covers your mortgage." Nate's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried more weight than a shout. "You just threw his food on the floor, in his own restaurant, and told him to get on his knees." The dining room didn't gasp. It inhaled. One collective breath sucked in and held. By 50 people who all understood at the same exact moment that they were witnessing something they would never forget. Craig's face didn't just go pale. It collapsed. The color left his cheeks first, then his lips, then his ears. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. No sound came out. His hands, the same hands that had snatched Owen's bag, that had opened wide and let it drop, were trembling at his sides. I didn't, sir, I had no idea. I didn't realize." "You didn't realize." Owen's voice came from behind Craig, quiet, even, final, like the last line of a verdict being read. Craig turned around. Owen was standing exactly where he'd been standing for the last 20 minutes. Same spot, same posture, same devastating calm. But something in his eyes had shifted. The patience was gone. What was left was something harder, something that had been forged in a lifetime of moments exactly like this one. "You didn't need to know who I was," Owen said. Every word landed like a nail driven into wood. "You didn't need to know what I own. You didn't need to know my title or my net worth or the name on the deed." He paused, let the silence do its work. "You just needed to treat me like a human being. And you couldn't do it." Craig opened his mouth. Nothing came out. His eyes darted to Nate, to Owen, to the dining room full of people staring at him, to Brenda's phone, still recording, to Tamara, who was looking at him with tears running down her face, and something in her expression that looked like relief. He had no allies in this room, not one. Nate stepped forward and extended his hand, palm up. "Keys, company phone, now." Craig's hand went to his pocket, stopped, shaking. Sir, please, can we talk about this in the back? Keys, phone, now. You're done. Craig's fingers fumbled in his pocket like they belonged to someone else. He pulled out a ring of keys, 4 keys on a silver chain with the Ashford Grill logo on the fob. His hand was shaking so badly the keys jingled against each other, a small, pathetic sound in the dead silence. He placed them on the host stand. Then the company phone, a black iPhone in a leather case with the Pinnacle logo on the back. Both objects sat on the polished wood like evidence on a courtroom table. Nate didn't touch them, just looked. Go to the back office. Collect your personal belongings. Nothing else. 5 minutes. Craig's eyes swept the dining room one last time, searching for something. A sympathetic face, a nod, one person who might take his side. He found nothing. 50 pairs of eyes stared back with expressions ranging from disgust to disbelief to quiet, cold satisfaction. He turned and walked toward the back office. The bouncer walk was gone. The squared shoulders had caved inward. His leather shoes still clicked against the tile, but the sound was different now, smaller, softer, like the footsteps of a man who suddenly realized the floor beneath him didn't belong to him and never had. Tamara watched him pass. He didn't look at her. Couldn't. She stood still as he disappeared down the hallway, then let out a breath she'd been holding for 8 months. 3 minutes later, Craig came back, carrying a small cardboard box, a framed photo, a coffee mug, a jacket, the possessions of a man whose kingdom had shrunk to 14 inches of cardboard. He stopped near the entrance, turned to Owen. His lips were dry. His voice cracked before the first word left his mouth. Mr. Foster, please. I have a family, a mortgage, 2 kids in school. Can we just talk about this? I didn't know who you were. Owen looked at him for a long time. Long enough that Craig's eyes started to water. You had a chance to talk, Owen said quietly. When I told you my name was on the bag. When I showed you my ID. When I said I'd be gone in 2 minutes. He paused. You chose to throw my daughter's birthday cake on the floor and tell me to get on my knees. His voice didn't waver, didn't rise. It was the steadiest sound in the building. That wasn't a mistake, Craig. That was a choice. And choices have weight. Craig's chin dropped to his chest. The framed photo almost slid off the box. He caught it with trembling fingers, pressed it against the mug, and walked out through the service exit. The door closed behind him with a soft click. Nobody said goodbye. The dining room exhaled. Not all at once, in stages. A murmur at table 2. A whispered, "Did that just happen?" near the window. A woman at the bar pressing her hand against her chest, shaking her head. Tamara crossed the floor to Owen. Her eyes were red, her hands still trembling. She didn't have a speech. She just stood in front of him and said what she'd been wanting to say for 8 months. He did this all the time. The comments, the seating, the scheduling. He told me once I was too aggressive for fine dining. Her voice broke on the last word. I didn't say anything because I needed this job. Owen put a hand on her shoulder, gentle, steady. You have nothing to apologize for, and you still have a job. That I promise you. 10 minutes later, 2 Atlanta PD officers walked through the front door. They came expecting a hostile individual, hands near their belts, eyes scanning. What they found was Owen Foster sitting calmly at the bar with a glass of water, Nate Ellison beside him in a charcoal suit, and a dining room full of witnesses who couldn't wait to talk. Brenda Lawson was first on her feet. She walked straight to the officers, phone in hand. I recorded the whole thing. That man used racial slurs, threw this gentleman's food on the floor, and called you here with a false report. The man he targeted is the owner of this restaurant. 3 diners confirmed every word. Tamara gave her account. Nate provided corporate context. The officers looked at each other. One clicked his pen. The other turned to Owen. "Sir, are you all right? Would you like to press charges for the false report?" Owen took a sip of water, set the glass down. "Yes, I would." The officer nodded, shook Owen's hand on the way out. The man who had been called a threat was now being called Sir by the very people Craig had summoned to remove him. The jazz was still playing, but it sounded different now, like it finally belonged. The following Monday morning, Diane Caldwell, Pinnacle Hospitality Group's VP of Human Resources, walked into the Ashford Grill at 8 with 2 investigators, a digital recorder, and a legal pad thick enough to stop a bullet. The investigation lasted 4 days. Every employee was interviewed, every shift log reviewed, every customer complaint from the past 8 months pulled from the archive and spread across a conference table in chronological order. What they found wasn't a single incident. It was a system. Black and Latino customers had been seated near the kitchen and the restrooms, consistently, deliberately, for months. Staff of color were given the slowest shifts, the worst sections, the tables that tipped the least. A black sous chef had been written up for attitude after questioning why his jerk chicken was pulled from the specials. Craig's reason, buried in an email he thought nobody would ever read, too ethnic for our clientele. Tamara Collins sat in that conference room for 2 hours. She brought a written statement, 3 pages, single-spaced, 14 separate incidents. Her hands shook when she handed it over. They were steady by the time she finished reading it aloud. 3 other employees of color gave corroborating statements. A line cook described Craig telling him to go back to washing dishes where you belong. A hostess recalled being ordered to seat black guests somewhere less visible. On Friday, Craig Henderson received a certified letter. Termination for cause, gross misconduct, systemic racial discrimination, no severance, no benefits, no recommendation. The words, for cause, discriminatory conduct, stamped into his permanent employment record like a scar that would never heal. That same Friday, Brenda Lawson's granddaughter posted the video. The title read, "Restaurant Manager Throws Black Man's Food on the Floor. The Black Man Owns the Restaurant." 2 million views in 48 hours. 5 million by Wednesday. 10 million by Friday. 25 million before the month was done. CNN ran it. MSNBC ran it. Local Atlanta affiliates opened their evening news with that shaky, raw footage. Craig snatching the bag, dropping it with spread fingers, sneering, pointing at the floor. And then the reversal. Nate's face. The 6 words. Craig crumbling like wet paper. The hashtag that's the owner, trended nationally for 3 straight days. Craig Henderson's full name, face, and employment history were now permanently fused to one of the most shared racism videos of the year. Every search of his name returned the video first. His social media was flooded within hours. He deleted Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, all of them. But screenshots had already been archived, stitched into reaction videos, turned into memes that would circulate for years. The internet has no delete button. Craig learned that the hard way. Owen appeared on a national morning show the following week. Same navy polo, same calm. He didn't ask for sympathy. He talked about systemic bias in hospitality, about the people who face what he faced but have no CEO to call, about the silence that lets men like Craig thrive for months unchecked. He said one line that went viral on its own. He didn't throw my food on the floor because of who I am. He threw it because of what I look like. That's the part that should terrify every single one of us. Then came the law. Patricia Greer, Owen's attorney, filed a civil rights complaint with the EEOC and a personal civil lawsuit against Craig. Intentional infliction of emotional distress, racial discrimination, and filing a false police report. The false report charge hit hardest. The DA held a press conference and chose her words carefully. Weaponizing law enforcement against a person because of their race is not a misunderstanding. It is not a bad day at work. It is a crime. Craig pleaded no contest. The sentence? 240 hours of community service, assigned to the National Center for Civil and Human Rights and a community kitchen in a neighborhood he'd never set foot in. Mandatory anti-bias training at his own expense. 2 years of probation. A $15,000 fine. The civil suit ended with a $250,000 judgment against Craig. He didn't have it. He sold his car, emptied his savings, borrowed from his brother, and still came up short. Owen took every dollar and donated it publicly to the Open Door Fellowship, a new fund backing Black and brown entrepreneurs entering the restaurant industry. He announced the donation at a press conference, with Craig's name attached to the fund's origin story. The irony was carved in stone. Craig's racism was now directly bankrolling the dreams of the very community he despised. And then came the part that broke him worse than any courtroom. Nobody would hire him. 214 applications, every restaurant group in Georgia, then the Southeast, then the Mid-Atlantic, then cities he'd never visited in states he'd never lived in. Not one callback, not one interview, not one polite, "we'll keep your file." He tried everything, applied under his middle name, scrubbed the Ashford Grill from his resume, relocated to Texas. But background checks caught the termination for cause. His criminal record surfaced on every screening. And his face, that sneering, pointing, bag-dropping face, frozen in Brenda Lawson's video, was seared into the memory of every HR professional in the hospitality industry. A hiring manager in Dallas recognized him 90 seconds into a Zoom call. She ended the interview with 2 words: "Good luck." The screen went black. The National Restaurant Association featured his case, unnamed but everyone knew, at their annual conference. A panel on workplace discrimination used it as the definitive example of a career erased by a single documented act of bias. Trade publications gave it a name: the Henderson Effect. 15 years of experience wiped out by 15 seconds of cruelty toward a man carrying a bag of birthday cake. Meanwhile, Owen was building. Pinnacle rolled out a company-wide overhaul across all 32 properties, anti-bias training for every manager, a confidential reporting hotline, quarterly culture audits by an independent firm. A new rule: every GM hire required personal approval from Owen or Nate. Nobody would slip through again. The Open Door Fellowship launched with 12 Black and brown entrepreneurs, seed money, mentorship, full access to Pinnacle's supply chain and commercial kitchens. At the launch, Owen gripped the podium and said, "I could afford to stand in that restaurant and wait. I had resources. Most people who go through what I went through don't have a CEO on speed dial. They don't have a legal team. They just have the humiliation. And then they go home and try to explain to their kid why daddy came back without the cake. This fellowship is for them." Within a year, 3 competing hospitality groups launched similar programs. Craig's cruelty had sparked a movement, just not the kind he would have wanted. 1 year later, Owen Foster stood at a podium inside Harvard Business School. 300 students, faculty, and industry leaders filled the auditorium. Camera crews lined the back wall. He was wearing a navy blue polo, khaki pants, white sneakers. The same outfit, the same man. The only thing different was that now the whole country knew his name. He spoke for 40 minutes about dignity, about power, about the quiet violence of assumptions. When he finished, the room stood. The applause lasted long enough to make him uncomfortable. He smiled through it, gently, like a man who had earned the right to be loud, but still chose to be quiet. Pinnacle Hospitality Group opened 4 new properties that year, revenue up, retention at a record high. The Ashford Grill had a new general manager, Tamara Collins, promoted from within, the youngest GM in company history. Tamara built the staff training program herself, called it Dignity First. Every new hire at every Pinnacle property sat through it on day 1. She kept a framed copy of her original written statement, 3 pages, single-spaced, on her office wall. Not a trophy, a reminder that silence has a price, and so does courage. Brenda Lawson became an unlikely advocate, spoke at community events about what it means to be a witness. She and Lily exchanged birthday cards every year. Brenda always wrote the same thing: "I see you, sweetheart." And Craig Henderson. He completed his 240 hours of community service at the National Center for Civil and Human Rights, spent months cleaning display cases, holding the stories of people who endured exactly what he inflicted. He applied to over 200 jobs in hospitality, not one callback. Tried retail management. 3 companies rescinded offers after background checks. His wife filed for divorce 4 months after the incident. Took the kids to her mother's house in Savannah. Didn't come back. He sold the house to cover the judgment, moved into a 1-bedroom apartment outside Macon, got a night shift stocking shelves at a distribution center, $16 an hour, no title, no authority, no one left to snap his fingers at. 15 years climbing, 15 seconds to destroy it all. Not bad luck, just the bill coming due. Now. The last scene. Owen's kitchen, Tuesday evening. Nothing special. A man and his daughter at a wooden table under warm yellow light. Lily was eating carrot cake, a fresh one, made by the Ashford Grill's new pastry chef, boxed and ribboned and carried home without incident. She picked the orange sprinkles off the top one by one, lining them up on her napkin, saving them for last, the way she always did. She looked up with frosting on her chin. "Daddy, why did that man throw your cake?" Owen set his fork down, looked at her for a long moment. "Because he didn't see me," he said quietly. "He looked right at me, but he didn't see me." Lily's forehead wrinkled the way it did when she was solving something. "Well, I see you, Daddy." Owen smiled, slow, warm, unstoppable. "Yeah, baby, I know you do." So let me ask you, have you ever witnessed something like this? What did you do? What do you wish you'd done? Drop it in the comments. I want to hear your story. If this one hit you somewhere deep, if it made you angry, made you think, made you want to send it to someone who needs to hear it, then share it, like it, pass it on, subscribe and hit that bell. More stories are coming, and the next one is going to leave you speechless. But before you go, remember this. The people who abuse their small amount of power always forget the same thing. There's always someone watching, always someone recording, and always someone with more power about to walk through that door. Karma doesn't knock. It just walks in.
Here's what I'll say. Let people live. That's it. If someone walks into a room and they are not bothering you, let them be. You don't need to question them. You don't need to test them. You don't need to prove you are in charge. Just let people exist in peace. And the second thing, watch out for people who love power too much. Not big power, little power, a small title, a small position. Because the people who abuse the more power are the ones who cause the most pain. They make other people's life miserable every single day. not because they have to, but because nobody tells them to stop. And the last thing, if you see someone being treated like they are less than a human, say something. Don't wait. Don't tell yourself, it's not my business. Because every time you stay quiet, you are telling the bully, keep going. And they will. They always will. Until someone opens their mouth. Like, share and subscribe. Real stories, real justice every week. And remember, you don't need to know someone's name, their job, or their story to treat them with the respect. They are a person. That's enough.